The morning fog clung to the windows of Willow Creek Clinic, and Clara Dawson braced herself for another day of being seen and unseen all at once. She adjusted the strap of her canvas bag and pushed through the door, the old brass bell above it giving a tired jingle that seemed to echo her own weariness. 2 years ago, she had walked into this clinic hoping to start fresh. Some days, it felt like she had. The familiar scent of coffee brewing in the back mingled with the sharper tang of disinfectant. Handmade quilts draped over worn chairs gave the waiting room a kind of second-hand warmth. Clara tucked a stray hair behind her ear and set to work, her movements efficient and steady. As she checked in the early patients, she felt it, the subtle flicker of glances, the way conversations softened when she passed. Her scar, a pale line tracing from temple to cheekbone, remained an uninvited guest at every introduction. Small smiles, lowered voices, the kind of unkindness that wrapped itself in politeness. Chloe Brennan breezed in with the chill November air, her cheeks pink, arms juggling a tray of muffins. "Cold one, huh?" she chirped, oblivious to the undercurrents that Clara had long learned to navigate. Clara smiled back, grateful for Chloe's relentless light even when it missed the shadows. Mrs. Hargrove, perched near the window in her knitted shawl, beckoned Clara over. "You move through a room like a song, child," she said, squeezing Clara's hand with a strength that belied her years. Some folks just don't know how to listen. The warmth of that kindness barely had time to settle when 2 newcomers snickered loudly across the room, their eyes darting toward Clara's scar. Her stomach tightened, old wounds pressing against the shell she wore so carefully. Across the room, a quiet man watched. His coffee cooling, his gaze steady but kind. The stranger returned the next day, settling into the same corner seat, like he belonged to the place and the silence between them. Clara, adjusting a vase of late autumn mums at the front desk, caught herself wondering if he would come back, and hated that she cared. She gave the vase a final nudge and straightened her uniform, willing herself not to glance his way again. The clinic moved at a lazy pace that afternoon, sunlight cutting long slices across the worn wooden floor. A few regulars lingered in the waiting room, flipping through old magazines, while the faint hum of the receptionist's radio filled the gaps. When the man finally approached the desk, it was with an easy stride and a quiet nod. "Evan Blake," he said simply, offering a half smile. "Scheduled for a quick checkup." Clara scanned the appointment book, her fingers brushing the page a little longer than necessary. "Room 2, please," she said, leading him down the short hallway. Inside the small exam room, Clara wrapped the blood pressure cuff around Evan's arm. She noticed the plainness of his clothes. Simple jeans, a worn flannel shirt, yet he wore them like armor, not indifference. "Any plans for Thanksgiving?" Evan asked, voice casual. Clara shrugged, lightly. "Baking a pie? Pumpkin, not much else." He tilted his head. "A classic. Are you a good baker?" "Good enough," she replied, a reluctant smile teasing her lips. Out in the waiting room, Mrs. Hargrove called out just loud enough to be heard, "Young folks need more pie and less loneliness." Clara flushed, but the sound of Evan's soft chuckle eased the sting. She found herself saying, almost without thinking, "I usually bake alone, kind of a tradition." Evan met her eyes, steady and calm. "Maybe this year it could be different." A cold rain tapped against the roof as Clara closed the clinic early, the town's annual Harvest Festival flickering to life down the street. She lingered a moment by the front window, watching umbrellas bob past and catching the faint scent of roasting chestnuts drifting from the vendor stalls outside. The hallway was quiet, the last of the patients gone, and Chloe had already bundled herself into a bright yellow raincoat and disappeared into the mist. The lunchroom, with its cluttered shelves of mismatched mugs and faded photos of staff long retired, felt like a refuge against the storm. Clara poured 2 coffees, her hands steady despite the undercurrent of nerves she couldn't quite explain. Evan was there, sitting by the little round table near the window, his coat damp at the shoulders. They sipped in easy silence for a while, the hum of the rain filling the gaps. Evan glanced at the volunteer flyer taped to the bulletin board, its corners curling from the humidity. "Thanksgiving plans?" he asked, voice casual but careful. Clara traced the rim of her mug before answering. "Same as always. Bake a pie. Keep busy." She hesitated, then added, "I wasn't always good at holidays." Evan didn't push, just waited, the way some people wait for storms to pass without slamming doors. When she spoke again, it was with the quiet precision of someone telling a story too many times. The fire, 12 years old, a neighbor's child trapped in a burning house. No hesitation, just instinct. The scar, a permanent reminder of what bravery had cost her, and how it had changed the way the world looked at her. Evan leaned forward slightly, no pity in his face, just something steadier. That sounds like the kind of courage most people only dream about. Later, alone, Clara slipped her bag over her shoulder and found a tiny folded note tucked inside. "Strength looks good on you." By Monday morning, the sleepy town of Willow Creek buzzed louder than the old espresso machine at Harper's Cafe. Clara felt it the moment she stepped through the clinic doors. The air was different, sharper, choppier, like a pond's surface broken by too many stones. At the front desk, Chloe was practically vibrating with excitement, clutching the local newspaper like a winning lottery ticket. "You won't believe this," she whispered, shoving the paper toward Clara. Blinking, Clara took it, her stomach twisting as she saw a grainy photo printed above the fold. Evan's profile caught mid-step, his jacket collar turned up against the cold. The headline screamed, "Mysterious Millionaire Spotted at Willow Creek Clinic?" The article underneath speculated wildly, a hidden heir to some real estate empire, a trust fund recluse seeking a quiet life. Clara skimmed it, her hands going clammy. She remembered the sturdy boots, the worn jacket, details she had noticed, dismissed, and now questioned. All morning, patients whispered behind cupped hands. Some speculated with wonder, others with the edge of envy. The sound of it followed Clara down the hallways, seeped under the exam room doors. When Evan arrived for his appointment, it took every ounce of Clara's professionalism not to flinch. She guided him wordlessly to an exam room, her fingers stiff, her gaze dropping to the clipboard instead of meeting his eyes. He looked the same, calm, gentle, but now every kindness felt painted over with something she wasn't sure she trusted. Afterward, Clara didn't head back inside. Instead, she crossed the small parking lot to where a solitary maple tree stood, its branches bare and rattling softly in the chill. Evan found her there, hands tucked deep into his pockets, face open and waiting. "You let me believe you were just like us," Clara said, voice low but trembling. Evan's quiet reply cut through the cold. "Maybe I hoped I was." The Willow Creek Thanksgiving Festival carried on without Clara, but the empty chairs at the pie-eating contest seemed to miss her too. She sat at her kitchen table, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, listening to the faint sounds of laughter and music drifting up from Main Street. The aroma of roasting turkey and spice cider sneaked in through the cracked window, stirring memories she wasn't ready to face. The wildflower Evan had given her, once bright and delicate, now lay pressed between the pages of her old nursing manual, its color faded, but its presence stubborn. Clara traced the edge of the worn cover with her finger, a heaviness settling in her chest she couldn't quite name. Her phone buzzed again, the screen flashing Chloe's name, then Ben's. She ignored both until the familiar ringtone of her younger brother's voicemail cut through. With a sigh, she answered on the fourth ring. "Happy Thanksgiving, sis," Ben said warmly. "Look, I know you're probably stewing, but real people? They don't come wrapped in neat little boxes. They show up messy, imperfect, and they stay." His words hung in the air long after the call ended. Clara sat in the thick silence, the late afternoon light slanting across her small living room, catching the edges of dust motes floating aimlessly. On the end table sat a folded piece of stationery, Mrs. Hargrove's handwriting unmistakable. Kindness doesn't always come in the wrapping we expect. Clara stared at the note, heart tight, realizing that turning away from Evan was never really about him. It was about fear. The fear of hoping again. She rose slowly, pulled her jacket from the closet hook, and slipped it on, the zipper catching slightly as her hands trembled. She pulled out her jacket, heart pounding, and stepped into the cold November evening. The old town hall glowed with golden string lights, casting soft halos over the gathering crowd. Clara stood for a long moment just inside the entrance, her hands buried deep in the pockets of her coat. The scent of roasted turkey and spiced cider wrapped around her, warm and inviting, as laughter floated across the rustic wooden floors. Near the door, the community's paper tree caught her eye. Each hand-cut leaf bore a message of gratitude, handwritten in bright inks. Last year, she had left her own leaf blank, unable to find the right words. Tonight, the tree shimmered with promises she wasn't sure she believed in, but still wanted to. At the refreshment table, Evan was ladling cider into ceramic mugs, his movements easy, his shoulders tense. When he saw her, he froze, the ladle slipping back into the pot with a soft splash. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then, Mrs. Hargrove appeared at Clara's elbow, her voice low and wry. "You only regret the dances you didn't take, dear." A gentle nudge, a knowing smile, and the old woman disappeared into the crowd. Clara's feet carried her forward before her mind caught up. Evan set the mug down carefully, stepping away from the table, closing the space between them. No one else seemed to notice the quiet gravity between them. They met near the center of the room, where the light from the strings overhead softened every rough edge. Clara looked up at him, her heart steady, and said, "You never needed to hide, at least not from me." No grand speeches followed, no applause, just a small, real smile shared between two people who had been seen and had stayed. As they sat side by side at the long wooden table, Clara's hand brushed Evan's, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't pull away. Under the soft glow of the town hall lights, two lives quietly found their way back to trust, stitched together not by grand gestures, but by simple, steady kindness. Sometimes the scars we carry are not signs of brokenness, but maps of where we've been brave. Like a worn quilt passed down through generations, the truest strength is often stitched from the threads of compassion and patience. If this story touched your heart, perhaps today is a good day to see someone not for their surface, but for the story they quietly carry inside.